Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Melissa Fors Shackelford joins us today to talk about her book, Harnessing Purpose, a guide that redefines marketing by focusing on connection, authenticity, and meaningful impact, and how these values can strengthen both your brand and your professional path. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Melissa Fors Shackelford is a marketing executive and consultant with over 20 years of experience helping healthcare brands and startups grow through purpose-driven strategy and strong market positioning. As founder of Shackelford Strategies, she works with C-suite leaders and emerging businesses to refine messaging, boost engagement, and scale sustainably. She is a recognized speaker and thought leader in branding and inclusive communications. Harnessing Purpose is her first book, and you can learn more about Melissa Fors Shackelford and her work at harnessingpurpose.com. Well, hi, Melissa. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Thanks, Sherry. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your book. To get us started, why don't you tell us about Harnessing Purpose? What's it all about? And what was your inspiration for writing it?
So I'd been thinking about doing a book for a long time, and I was doing a podcast on marketing because that's what I do. And on the podcast, the host mentioned that so many young marketers that he knew were leaving the profession because they felt like they'd sold their soul. And I can see that, I can understand that. Marketing these days has become so data driven and a little, let's say, manipulative in how it's working. And all of the heart kind of has, in some ways, gone out of marketing. But what I told this podcast host, I said, that really hasn't been my experience because I find a lot of personal fulfillment and meaning in my marketing. And I've chosen to work for brands that really are mission driven, that I can see how I'm connecting with their customers. And that was really kind of how I thought, oh, I've wanted to do a book. This would make a great book because I can share my experience over 20 plus years as a marketing leader. I can share that experience with others if they're seeing their frustration with the profession or not really seeing the value and the meaning in the brands that they work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And write what you know. You know marketing, write a book about it, help others. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, Harnessing Purpose it opens with a strong message about aligning personal purpose with marketing strategy. Why does that internal alignment matter so much?
So I think this is very similar in many ways to just on a corporate level in general. When all employees understand how their work supports the overall mission, they're more engaged and they do better work. But when we're talking about marketing, because marketing really is your face and voice of your company, if you don't have that internal alignment of your personal purpose, it really becomes a disconnected exercise and really transactional. So when marketers really understand why they do what they do, it truly infuses every tactic with more meaning, and it really fuels creativity. It strengthens their own resilience and it fosters authenticity, which is so important these days in marketing. It really allows marketers to do what they do best and build connections with their customers.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned why because I mean it's all about the why. If you don't know your why, how do you move forward, you know?
Exactly.
So,
And that's something I think just for all of us, not just, marketers or people building brands. I think all of us do better when we know our own personal why.
yeah, for sure. How do you define purpose in marketing and why do you believe it's more than a trend?
So, brand purpose, the way I define it in the book, is really the overarching reason your business exists, the value it aims to deliver to their customers and sometimes society as a whole. And it's more than anything, it's the North Star that guides the organization's decision making, guides its core values, inspires customers to connect with them.
Mm,
And I think why it's not just a trend is we're seeing like the younger generations really wanting to connect with the brands that they engage with. And
yeah.
purpose in marketing really is the reason behind, it should be the reason behind our work. It should go beyond metrics and data and market share. It really should be that force that drives brands to stand for something meaningful and ultimately build those lasting connections with their customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Traditional marketing often jumps like straight into tactics and metrics. And why is it more effective to begin with the introspection and personal values?
So I thought a lot about this in when working on the book, and in the book, I defined your personal purpose as the deeply held conviction that drives you as an individual, kind of your unique calling in life, why you get up in the morning, what pushes you forward in the face of challenges and obstacles. And I think since marketing is all about connection at its core, knowing yourself helps you to be able to connect with your customers better. And really, as we've talked about, tactics without meaning just become noise. And
Mm,
when we really take the time and do that introspection on our personal values, we know to ask the right questions. And when marketers really ground their work in their own personal values, they can move forward with more intention. Others also outside of marketing, if you know your personal why, it helps you just to do better work.
hmm.
It's something I think that I found really my first couple of jobs after I graduated from undergrad were at manufacturing companies and, Fortune 100 manufacturing companies. And it was wonderful, wonderful experience, but it didn't really resonate with my personal values. And then I found healthcare. And granted, I was on a side of healthcare that wasn't really doing direct patient care or anything, but it could resonate a lot more with my personal values because I felt like I was doing good in the world versus
Right.
working for a manufacturing company that, one of them made thermostats, another of them made data center tape. They're interesting, they're needed, but they didn't really resonate with my personal values.
Right. How does connecting with the brand's purpose contribute to that marketer's personal well being and fulfillment?
So it doesn't mean that I think you have to work for a nonprofit or some sort of cause marketing organization. I think you can really connect with the brand's purpose by looking into what the brand stands for, what their values are, how they treat their employees. I think there's so much to it. And I think we really know that younger marketers, and I'll say that about young people, but I'm not a young marketer, but I also feel this way. They want to feel that they're, like I said, doing good in the world, even if it's for an organization that like could be a manufacturing organization. They want to feel like they're doing good in the world and they want to feel that sense of purpose and fulfillment and meaning. I think sometimes the older generation just said, I'm just going to continue on and do my 40 years at this company no matter what, whether I believe in it or not. And younger people are really marching with their feet. We've seen it in the last few years in particular. People are saying, no, I don't want to work for an organization like that. I want to work for an organization that either has values that I believe in, supports customers that I'm interested in and want to support, or treats their employees really well. There's organizations that just generally value their employees and value their education, value their growth. And that might be another reason why somebody really resonates with that brand.
Yeah. Yeah. There's pros and cons to the way each generation kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
looks at their, work ethic. But I do like the way that the younger generation now are speaking out for what they want, and they're asking for their value, to be rewarded. And that's something that, when I entered the workforce, I never would have done. I'm like, oh, thank you. You want to pay me below minimum wage? Thank you. You know,
Same, same, exactly, exactly. And that's a beautiful thing. I love and younger generation is also saying things like we don't want to work, 90 hours a week. I understand all that. I think there's something to be said for that. And that also translates to the younger consumer. So it's something I think that we don't just see in our staff, whether it's marketing staff or other staff. We also see it with consumers and how they're really voting with their values.
right, right. How does purpose driven thinking change the way teams collaborate? Since marketing is a team sport, basically.
Yep, absolutely. It's a team sport. And I think even if you're an individual, like a freelancer or contractor, you're still, as a marketer, you're working with others. You have subject matter experts, you've got business owners, and you've got, data folks, you've got analysts, you've got web people, you've got technical folks, you've got creative marketers, you've got designers and writers. I mean, there's so many people. You've got PR
Yeah.
professionals. Sometimes you can combine it all into one person, but normally you're working with all across the board. And marketing usually is more of a kind of a shared service working across an organization. And so that's a beautiful thing because when you have all these individuals and they truly know what their North Star is, then they're all marching in the same direction.
Mm,
And it really helps to have that shared mission and vision because you've got all these different people involved. And when you have that purpose, it gives kind of a common language and direction. It builds trust, which is so, so critical when we're talking about teams, but you're also talking about trust with your customers. It breaks down silos. It really empowers people to collaborate more and focus on what's the end game, what's the impact, not just the deliverables. And if everyone has that common North Star, it really becomes the why of the team. I've worked with some teams during my career that just were so rooted in their mission and their why. It's kind of like they say, like in the military, you do anything for your team. Same with, I've worked with some of these marketing teams where we do anything for each other because we really had that common bond and we knew what our why was. But we also felt that we were doing such good because we knew what the North Star of the organization was.
yeah. Let's face it, when you're part of a team like that, I mean, it drives you, you
Yes,
know?
I agree. I agree. And there's all this data that shows that engaged employees give more of their discretionary effort. And obviously, everyone wants to work in an environment where they feel valued and they feel like they can thrive. And I think, that's one thing. Marketers have a lot of pressure and a lot of visibility. And that's where knowing their why, feeling valued, and feeling empowered, and feeling like your team has your back just makes it a well oiled machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about some of the companies you highlight in harnessing purpose, like Ben and Jerry's, Tom's, IKEA, big, big companies. What made their stories resonate with your message?
And just to note, to align with your purpose, an organization doesn't have to be some big global consumer facing brand like those examples. But those are
Hmm.
ones that everybody knows and everyone can say, oh, yeah, I understand what they're doing. I can emulate some of what they do. And each of those brands really has dug in deep and built their purpose into their DNA. I mean, think about Ben and Jerry's. I may or may not have some Ben and Jerry's in the freezer right now, but they don't just kind of advocate for social justice or causes they believe in. They really embed it into everything they do. They name their ice creams after causes that they believe in. In fact, there was one that I loved. I didn't actually buy it, but I loved the name when I read about it. It's called I Do. It was for marriage equality, kind of a play on I do, I do. I thought that was adorable, but they actually put the causes they believe in into their product. But they really walk the walk. You never see Ben and Jerry say, yes, we're here selling I do for marriage equality. And then you hear them saying something off brand somewhere else. That would just shatter all the trust that they build with their audience. I mean,
Right.
Tom, the same thing. Tom's really kind of reimagined a whole business model. I mean, think about it. Since Tom's came out and said every time they sell shoes, they're going to give away shoes, there's so many other companies that have followed suit. But again, they're living their values, they're following it. You never hear them off message because that's really in their DNA. Same with IKEA. IKEA is another brand. Everyone around the globe knows IKEA. And they don't just do kind of marketing stunts, they're really built into their mission. Same with another brand would be Patagonia. I think you say Patagonia, everyone
Mm,
knows that they're out to change the world and save the planet. And when you buy their products, you know what you're getting. These days, we hear about other brands who will sort of say they believe in something, and then you hear things coming out about them that you think, well, they don't really truly believe in this cause, or they don't really believe in the values that they're. So
right,
those are
right.
brands. When you hear Ben and Jerry's, you know who they are. When you hear Tom's, you know who they are and what they're doing. And that's just when you talk about building meaningful connections with customers, that's spot on.
Yeah, yeah. And extra kudos to Ben and Jerry's because I may or may not have purchased a pint of ice cream based on what they called it alone.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
Oh, that sounds so good. I don't know what the flavor is, but I love the title.
Exactly. So, see, it's genius. It's genius on many levels, but a marketer came up with that, and that's the beautiful part of it for me.
I think one of the most compelling ideas in the book is that marketing can be a conduit for human connection, like, we just talked about. What does that look like in practice?
So, I think at its core, I mean, really, marketing and I guess sales is really one person connecting with another person, even if it's a big B2B brand. it's still one person connecting with another person. And so I think a lot of it looks like storytelling that centers on people's lived experiences. And you can do that through a lot of different ways. When you're a consumer brand, like whether it's Ben and Jerry's or Tom's, they can talk about the people that they're supporting. But also, if you're a B2B brand, it could be your customer testimonials.
Mm,
And people want to hear from other real people. And then that becomes something that you can identify with. And I know I talk in the book a lot about inclusive marketing, but being able to identify with a brand, identify with their values is so important. And storytelling is one of the most powerful tools that we have as marketing, just because it's really, truly, like you said, it's all about that human connection. And I think about some of the brands I've worked with over the years and some of the work that they've done, whether it's a customer testimonial in a B2B brand, or we're talking about a patient who's received life saving care.
mm,
It's really that storytelling that people remember. And when you're
yeah,
working so hard to build a lasting connection with your customers, to build that kind of lifetime customer, that's what works to really resonate with them.
right, right. I don't know. I think storytelling just drives everything.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, tell us a little bit about cause marketing. What does it mean, and what separates meaningful cause driven campaigns from performative ones?
Oh, like I'm so glad you asked. That's such an interesting kind of thing to talk about. A little bit of cause marketing. So we mentioned Ben and Jerry's and the I do, for marriage
Yeah.
equality. So that was a cause driven campaign that they had. But what differentiates the ones that were meaningful, that really truly these are brands that live their values versus the performative ones? There's so many examples of those. But I think three things really differentiate them, and it's authenticity, it's action, and it's accountability. And
Mm,
that accountability is a key one. And meaningful campaigns like that really stem from a brand's core values, and they're backed by real commitments to action and accountability. The performative ones sort of check the box or they don't have any follow through. Audiences can feel the difference. And the risk is, and we see it honestly these days, in recent years, but actually right now in the news, you see brands that might have said something or sort of had some cause driven campaigns, and then things come out about the brand. I don't want to name any of them, but you see them very obviously not living those values. And that just shatters trust. And when we think about building meaningful connections with our customers, building that trust with your customers is how it starts. And if you shatter that trust, like many brands have done, they see it in the results. And it might happen because some executive said something like we saw years ago, it was quite a while ago with Lululemon, and they've made changes since then. But you can't have executives speaking out of turn. You can't have a brand doing something to their employees that goes against the values that they say they have. It's so important to really walk the walk of your values, whether you're supporting a cause or doing purpose driven marketing. It really goes back to, for me, it goes back to living those values. And so that brand needs to know what their values are to start, and then they really need to live them
yeah,
because they'll get
yeah.
caught. They'll get caught.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, it all comes out. Harnessing Purpose devotes an entire chapter to inclusive and ethical marketing, and you mentioned inclusivity briefly. What does true inclusivity look like in today's landscape?
So I'm a big, big believer in inclusivity and accessibility in marketing because, again, it's really one person connecting with another. And when we think about storytelling and doing marketing to our communities, when I think about inclusivity, it's really speaking to everyone. And that means doing some real basic things like making sure our marketing is inclusive of all the different people we could deal with. So I've been a healthcare marketer for an awful long time. Everyone is a healthcare consumer. And so we need to think about all shapes, sizes, ages, races, religions, everything in our marketing. But beyond that, we need to think about people who are neurodivergent. We need to think about people who are living with different disabilities. And what that means is we probably need to make sure we're leaning into accessible marketing. And
Hmm.
that means simple things like closed captioning your videos so that somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing can access the video. It's not
Mm,
hard, but it's kind of table stakes these days. It's making sure you use alt tags on your images so that somebody with low vision or is blind can use a screen reader to read through your website. It means following a lot of the accessibility standards that are out there today. And when I think about overall, and I think about for me personally, when I find a lot of purpose and meaning in my work as a marketer, leaning into that inclusivity and leaning into that accessibility in marketing, it really gives me so much personal fulfillment because I
mm,
know that this is something that we didn't used to do and we're getting better at it. And it's something that I and my teams, we can start to make a difference there. And beyond that, you kind of mentioned the ethical marketing. I think that's something people don't think about a lot is ethics in marketing, but I've worked in some industries, believe me, it's not hard these days with modern marketing to be really unethical in your marketing and prey on vulnerable individuals. I mean, you
hmm
just think about the opportunity for bait and switch, how you could pose as someone you're not, and some of the real manipulative things that we can do in marketing. You can just kind of imagine some of the unethical things that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I know at Reader Views, we have an awards program, and we decided way back when that we weren't going to accept books that were exclusive or divisive or hate driven. And that's just something that we believe in. And we've gotten some flack, surprisingly, but that's just something that
I'm
we
sure
stand for. And, our
you stand
contest, our
for it.
rules. If you don't like it, you don't have to enter.
I love that, but it's something that I'm sure you and your team feel so good about because it's you're living your values. And
Yeah.
also, why would you want to promote something that was kind of hateful or divisive? I get that and I love that. And it actually makes me appreciate you and your team even more because you're doing that
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
living your values.
Yeah. You have a chapter on creativity and burnout. Why is burnout such a widespread challenge in the marketing profession?
Marketing really sort of lives at the intersection of high pressure and change and is really such a high profile department
Mm,
because if things aren't going well, the CEO is going to call on marketing. What can you guys do?
mm,
And so, without having really purpose as their anchor or their North Star, it's really easy to lose connection to the why. And it's really easy to have the team become exhausted or detached or burnt out. I think, and my experience has been when marketers really know their personal why and the brand's why, it helps to keep everything moving in spite of that whole pressure cooker. I've worked with some marketing teams, as I've mentioned, that were just amazing and really would do anything for their partners in crime. And when the rubber hits the road, when the pressure's on, when the numbers aren't coming in for the organization and the CEO is calling to say, what can you guys do? That's when really having that strong team with their understanding of their North Star and their why, that's when the
yeah.
team can keep going in spite of all of that.
Okay. I mean, there's burnout in every profession,
Oh,
but marketing just seems like you said, it's so intense, it's so driven.
well, and people are
Um,
expected to be creative
yeah.
when there's all this pressure. And that doesn't really go together. When you want to give people space to really be creative and think about how they can connect with their customers, having that high pressure environment isn't really what you want. That's not necessarily conducive to having creativity.
Right, right. It's like telling someone to sit down and write a book.
Exactly, exactly. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Make it interesting. Yeah. Oh. Now, for small business owners or solopreneurs kind of just starting out, what's the first step to bringing more purpose into their marketing?
Such a great question. Such a great question. And what I always tell them is start with your story. Start with your sort of the founder's why. Why did they start the business? How did they start the business? What's their story? Because that's what resonates with their customers. So, why did you start it? What are you hoping to create? Let's dig into their origin story because their origin story really is all about their purpose and ultimately all about their values. And it becomes that foundation for everything else that they do. I've met some founders with some amazing origin stories. And when you start to dig into their why, that's what resonates with their customers. I work a lot in healthcare, and you see a lot of wonderful things happening in women's health today. And a lot of it is because there's women founders who had an experience and they said they want to make change because of their own personal experience.
Mm,
I just think start with that why, build on it. It resonates more with your customers or your prospects than anything else. And just keep to that North Star. I think that's such a great way to start. And if you can keep to that North Star, you'll be wildly successful because whether it's an investor or a customer or partner, they're all going to sign on and see that you're very authentic because you're living your values.
right, right. You have in Harnessing Purpose insights aimed specifically for leaders. What does purpose driven leadership look like inside a marketing department?
I would say it's probably the same for leaders across the board, not
Hmm.
just marketing. But as we talked about, marketing tends to be a unique department or area because it has such high pressure, demands for being creative, and very high visibility across organization because of getting results. So I would say across the board for leaders, in particular in the marketing department, it's about transparency, it's about empowerment, and a willingness to walk the talk. Really thinking about purpose driven leaders. They create environments where values guide decisions, where
Hmm.
all those different voices are heard and they're valued, and where people feel recognized and valued, and not just for what they produce, but for who they are and how they show up. I think about myself as a leader of marketing teams and of at organizations. What I try to do is really support people and value them and respect them for their talent and who they are and their lived experience. And that's where I feel like I've had a lot of success as a leader because of that, because of valuing them and listening to them and being transparent about what I'm doing and about my why.
Right, right. Who is your target audience for this book? Who do you see benefiting the most from harnessing purpose?
Well, I started off thinking it was just marketers or those marketers who feel like they might have sold their soul. And I wanted to speak to them and tell them about how I find purpose and meaning in marketing. But as I progressed in the book, it really evolved to not just marketers, but also business owners and founders, because I know particularly small business owners and founders, they're trying to figure out how do they connect with their customers. So I wanted to also speak to them about bringing in purpose and meaning into their own companies and their own brands so that they could build those meaningful connections with their customers. And it's really thinking about my 25 plus years as a marketer and as a leader, working with brands to build those meaningful connections with their customers. And so that's where ultimately this is for marketers, it's for marketing leaders, it's for business owners and founders.
What's the most common misconception people have when they hear purpose driven marketing?
The most common misconception people have when they hear purpose driven marketing is that it's soft, that it's about charity and not strategy, that it's for nonprofits,
Mm,
or it's for just direct to consumer brands. And in fact, purpose is a strategy. It drives differentiation, it drives customer loyalty, it drives growth. It's really not fluff. And for me, if I think about a lot of organizations that are so focused on lifetime value of a customer, well, what's better than a strategy to help you create lasting connection? And that's leaning into your purpose and leaning into your values to create that lifetime connection with a customer.
yeah. I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you had on your book so far?
I've been shocked at the positive reaction from so many different people in so many different walks of life, not just marketers, but a lot from business owners and business leaders who are looking to find ways to create that meaningful connection with their customer. That all has been wonderful and surprising. And it makes me so inspired to continue to charge forward along this path.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah. So, will you write another book, do you think?
I would love to. I haven't started anything, but I've been thinking about other topics. I'm so passionate about inclusive leadership and the emotional side of marketing. So I'm really I want to continue on this mission. I do a lot of public speaking and consulting, helping organizations kind of operationalize how they can bring meaning to their brands. But yeah, I would love to do another book. I think it was a hard experience. It was a very fulfilling experience. And now that it's finally out there, it's a little bit like I had a child and I want to help it grow.
Exactly. Oh, and there's so much more to it than just writing your book, right? I'm sure you found that
Exactly.
out.
Exactly. But as a marketer, I love that part of it, and that
Yeah,
that that part's fun for me, and I know a lot of people who want to write a book, that part is uncomfortable for them, but this part, I love doing public speaking, I love doing marketing, and that's all part of the launching of a book.
right, right. So, for people who have read your book and kind of want to take the next step or go a little further, how can they get in touch with you, learn more, connect with you, all that kind of fun stuff?
There's a couple of ways. One is to go to harnessingpurpose.com. So it's my book website. There you can sign up for my Substack blog and my newsletter, or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's a platform that I'm very active on. Melissa Fors Shackelford. I would love to connect with people. I'd love to hear their comments, their feedback, their suggestion, their own experience with purpose driven marketing.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. And it was really a pleasure to learn more about you and your work. Very informative. Thank you so much.
Sherry, I've appreciated getting to know you, and I love that you have such insightful questions on the topic.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Melissa Fors Shackelford, author of Harnessing Purpose. You can learn more about Melissa and her work at harnessingpurpose.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.